What's up, Active Lifers? Welcome back to the guest show on the Active Life podcast. I'm Dr. Sean Pastuch. I'm your host, and today's guest is Mike Lee. Mike Lee is a retired professional boxer who has shifted identities and purposes to move into owning and operating with his sister Angie, Soul CBD. And this podcast has very little to do with Soul CBD. I just wanted to make sure that I told you about it in the beginning because he's a good dude and you should go look at what he's doing. On this episode, we talk about what it's like to shift identity from athlete to business person, what it's like to work with your sister. What's scarier, going into the ring with somebody who wants to knock your head off, or going into business and being responsible for the livelihood of yourself and other people. It was really a fun and engaging conversation. I've been following Mike's journey since he was like 22, 23 years old, believe it or not. I stumbled upon him on a Subway commercial and was interested. And he's a good dude. And I really enjoyed interviewing him. And I think that you're going to get a lot out of it because his mindset is just right on point. He's the living example of what we talk about at Active Life all the time. You are not your diagnosis. You'll understand what I mean by that when you listen to this podcast with Michael. Here we go. We're going to get to the show in a minute. What I want to talk about first is the new Active Life Enhanced Assessment. We've been getting a lot of questions from you about what do I do when it bothers my knee when I squat, but not when I do anything else. And you're not necessarily ready to work with us as a one-on-one client, and we totally understand that. We've gotten hundreds of questions just like the one I just said. My knee hurts when I do this. What should I do about it? And the honest answer is always, it depends. And we need to ask many more questions to give you the best answer. We decided that the best way for us to help you with the thorough answer to those questions is to develop a product, a service that can help you. So we came up with the Active Life Enhanced Assessment. This is a 4-day process in which you go through the similar assessment to what our one-on-one clients go through. You get to talk to one of our staff members about what it is that they found on your assessment. And they will give you instruction on how to overcome the aches and pains that have been plaguing you for a long time without going to the doctor or missing the gym, if it's appropriate for you to do that. So if you're interested in jumping into our Active Life Enhanced Assessment, go ahead, check out the link in the show notes, and we'll see you there. All right. Mike Lee, welcome to the Active Life podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me, Sean. I appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. Mike, I didn't tell you this in the pre-show, but I remember back in the day when I believe it was Subway. You were an athlete for Subway. Is that right?
Yeah.
I remember they came out and they're like undefeated boxing champion, Mike Lee. And when that happened, I'm like, I follow boxing. I don't know who this guy is. But then I started looking and I'm like, oh, all right. He's like a legit guy. It's not like some random dude that they found on the street and, won some amateur fights and they're just putting him up there like Jared Fogle. So I've been following you since those days. I don't know if you remember how long ago that was, but that's when I first found Mike Lee.
Man, it seems like another lifetime ago. I remember when I first got that deal, I was only 4-0, 5-0. So I was young, undefeated fighter, but I just fought on ESPN and my agent called me and said I had opportunity to meet with Subway. Dream come true. I'm 22 years old. Mm-hmm. Next thing you know, after the meeting, they fly me out to Paramount Studios and I'm filming commercial with Michael Phelps and Blake Griffin. I was like, what am I doing here? I don't belong here. You know what I mean? It was wild. But I ended up getting on 2 Super Bowl commercials. I tested really well for them in their focus groups and I kept winning my fights and it was a wild ride, man. It was really funny. I mean, it was basically 3 years of commercials and 3 years of my friends constantly making fun of me for selling turkey sandwiches and all the corny shit I had to do, but it was a fun ride.
Turkey-ish sandwiches.
Yeah, well, exactly. At the time, I didn't realize it was so funny. All this shit came out, first of all, about Jared and that whole thing, which was wild and obviously had no idea. And secondly, like, they used, some of their ingredients in the bread, the same chemicals as what was in yoga mats. And I'm getting all these tweets and people mad at me. And I'm like, I'm not the one in the kitchen. I have no idea at this time. I'm 22. And when Subway says, hey, we want to shoot some commercials with you, you just say yes. I didn't know. And so, Yeah, now I realize not quite a healthy option, is it?
Well, what are you gonna do? I bet that you are happy to look back and not see a lot of photos with like you and Jared Fogle, with you being like, "This is my dude. Jared Fogle's the man."
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I ended up meeting him a couple times, and he seemed like a normal dude. I don't think we ever shot a commercial together, but yeah, thank God didn't have any like tweets. Me and him hanging out on a boat or on a private island or anything like that. No, I did not have that type of connection with him. Thank God.
Well, and so following you led me to finding your sister, Angie.
Yeah.
Who I've told many, many, many people, male and female, the Angie Lee Show probably is one of the best podcasts I've listened to at all to learn how to talk to your audience effectively. She knows exactly who she's talking to. In fact, I listened to it for about a year, and then I was like, if this chick calls me Cheryl one more time, I have to be out. I have to be out. So, yeah. So I'm excited to be chatting with you.
Yeah, man, I appreciate that. I'm so proud of her. You know, she's my little sister. She went from, I remember like 8-10 years ago, she was telling us like, I want to get into this fitness world. I want to get into coaching. And then when she started podcasting way back in the day, I was like, what the fuck is a podcast? And go get a real job, you know? And now look at her, like she went from her first event. I think there were like 10 girls there, and her last one maybe had a couple thousand that she was speaking in front of. I was in the back of the room crying. I'm not going to lie. I was bawling my eyes out. I was so proud of her. And so it's cool that we've now gone in business together and co-founded, this CBD company, but it's been a wild ride, and I'm just so proud of her.
Well, I'll ask you a little bit about that relationship in a bit. And just so that you know, I sensed a little bit of hesitation there to say that the company is called Soul CBD, maybe because you don't want to sound like somebody who's just selling your stuff on the podcast. Yeah. You're like, I wouldn't have had you on the show if I was uncomfortable talking about your business and you being allowed to talk about my sister and I founded Soul CBD, because like, I want to hear about that.
All right. Listen, I appreciate that. I think I'm I'm naturally a humble guy, and I tend to not want to just, advertise and push things down people's throat. But, I believe in the company. We started it for a reason. Our why is huge. I mean, I was someone as a professional athlete who was in so much pain. I'm sure we'll talk more about that. I mean, I was diagnosed with autoimmune disease. I was on 8 different medications. I was completely addicted to painkillers, man. I went through the shit, and I know a lot of people who have also gone through the pain. And so through that process, that pain turned into a gift because it forced me to look into all natural solutions to anxiety, pain, sleep, because, I was dealing with it. And that's how I discovered CBD. And Angie had a lot of anxiety issues naturally, as someone who's talking in front of thousands of people and constantly, on camera and all these things. So when we discovered CBD, we loved it. And our first thing was like, dude, let's help people. That's what I told Ange right away. I was like, let's help people discover, this incredible plant. And little did we know it'd take off and become this huge company. It was something we just kind of started as a side hustle while we both had separate careers. And it's been really, really fun.
Well, we're definitely going to come back and talk about that.
Cool.
I want to hear about that. So the first question I have for you is, you had a successful career as a professional boxer, and you transitioned from that career into a career as a professional business person. The hardest thing that I've seen from most of the athletes who I've had the privilege of developing relationships with and working with is that the hardest part is the identity switch. I no longer am the guy who can, or the woman who can do this thing. And now I'm going to go into this. And we see so many athletes who ride it out too long. And then, it's been too long when you start to see like, oh, I know that person and they are not into that product that they are saying they are into. That's when like it starts to feel like it's gone too long. What was it like for you to make the transition from professional boxer as an identity, if that was your identity, to professional business person?
Really fucking hard. That's the God honest truth. And it still is. You hit the nail on the head there. I mean, it is so difficult when it becomes your identity. It's who I was as a human being. It's how I received love. It's how I felt like I was enough. I mean, I put on boxing gloves when I was 8 years old. And then after that, I was an athlete playing a million different sports. But I was, once I won the Golden Gloves in my class and I got signed by Top Rank as a young man. And next thing you know, like we said, I'm doing Super Bowl commercials and I'm receiving all this love because of my achievements, not necessarily because of who I was as a human being. And that's kind of how I felt. And so I'm 33 years old now. I retired about a little over a year ago. I'm grateful, man. I had an incredible career. I got to fight in Madison Square Garden. And, my last fight was for a world title, the MGM Grand, that I ended up losing. But I think I actually maybe went a little bit too long. And as you talk about that, because my final few fights in the last couple of years, I was in so much pain, physical pain, even mental pain, because my body was kind of breaking down with the autoimmune stuff. And just after 8-year career of getting punched in the face, but I had no idea what to do. And that scared the shit out of me. I didn't know what was next. And from the outside looking in, I think, especially for athletes, people don't understand that. They think like, oh, you're on top of the world, you're making money, like who cares? Go do something else. But to my core, when I woke up every day, I had a mission and a purpose every single day and with my team. And if I quit, what do I have? And so for me, it's been a difficult transition. It's been a fun one getting into entrepreneurship. There's a lot of similarities in there with being an athlete in terms of getting knocked down and getting back up. But my core and my identity shifting at this stage of my life is still difficult. I still have nights where I'll wake up in the middle of the night and I miss the hell out of that feeling of jumping on the ropes in front of 1,000 people. I miss that feeling of purpose. I miss that feeling that I knew who I was and what I was doing. And so, I felt alone when I decided to retire and quit. And I still feel that sometimes, I'm still working on it, but that identity shift is a work in progress. And I don't know if I'll ever feel 100% satisfied like I was, to be honest, man. And that's something I have to live with. And I have to be more grateful now of my experiences instead of sitting here wondering, why don't I feel the same way I used to?
It sounds like one of those, like a similar situation to a race car driver who is now like, they could buy a Ferrari and drive it on the Autobahn. It's useless compared to being on a racetrack in a race car. And I think that it's really cool to have been able to watch you through that transition. I wanted you to beat Caleb Plant. That was something I was like, I want Mike Lee to win this thing. Like, this guy kind of feels like a dick to me. I want Mike to beat him. That was whatever. Didn't go the way we wanted, right? What are you going to do? But I think it's watching you move through that and go into Soul CBD and into your life, as much as I'm able to see from Instagram and, podcasts. I think you've done a good job from the outside looking in. I want to at least give you some commendament on that. I think thank you. It's a model to follow.
I appreciate that. It's been a tough journey. I think I get in my head too much, and it's interesting. I feel like it's never enough, and it's a blessing and a curse because that's what made me successful. But at the same time, I need to find peace and happiness in what is now. And yeah, man, that's a tough transition. I'm sure anybody feels that way, not just athletes, like anybody is transitioning into a new career, a new role. It's all about adapting. And so that means a lot. It's been, so often people don't see behind the scenes. They don't see those nights I can't sleep, or those nights where I feel like, I wish I had one more fight, or I could jump back into it, or my body felt better. But, I'm doing the best I can with the tools I have. And it's just a constant progress, man.
And the autoimmune disease, that's ankylosing spondylitis, yes?
Yeah. And in fact, unfortunately, we got some more blood markers, and it looks like I could have lupus as well, which is an indicator of a lot of other symptoms that I've been getting. the issue with autoimmune is it's a lot of gray area and even ankylosing spondylitis. So I was diagnosed with ankylosing spondylitis years back, but unfortunately now it may have some signs of lupus, but we're working on it. I will tell you, dude, I feel better now than I do years ago in training and beating up my body. So it's a tough journey, but I'm on the right path.
Well, good for you. I hope you get exactly where you want to go. If you're ever looking for it, I'm talking phenomenal doctor who takes patients who are not local. I don't know. She doesn't take insurance. So I imagine she take you from wherever you are. Her name is Dr. Gabrielle Lyon.
Okay.
I'd be happy to connect you, but she did blood work on me. We ordered 39 tests and I there was nothing wrong. I went to her. Fortunately, I'm just like, I want to optimize. And she started asking me questions like, does your butt ever itch? I'm like, yeah, doesn't everyone's butt itch sometimes? And she's like, well, yeah, but does it come on in like these waves? I'm like, yeah. She's like, I think, when was the last time you were in Asia? I'm like 10 years ago. She's like, okay. How often do you eat sushi? She's like, I think you have a worm. I'm like, okay. So I got to send blood work, like all kinds of stuff to Nigeria to a lab. But the biggest thing is she asks me, she's like, are you exposed to mold often? I'm like, no, not exposed to mold at all. She's like, all right, well, we'll come back to that one. There was something on my markers that she found. We're redoing my house right now. Like my house is a drive-through right now. There's no front, there's no back. You can drive a car right through the house. And when we ripped up the floors, I'm like, oh, I guess I am exposed to mold. Every room, mold in every room. So all to say, Dr. Gabrielle Lyon has been phenomenal for me. And if you're ever interested in a connection with somebody who maybe thinks a little bit differently, I'd be happy to make it.
No, I appreciate that and love to connect with her in the future. It sounds like she's a functional medicine doctor. It sounds like
she calls herself muscle-centric medicine. She's an MD.
Interesting.
Yeah, she works with mostly like military operators and executives.
Well, it sounds like she's coming at it from a holistic approach, which I've learned over the years is the way to go. I mean, like I said, I was on 8 different medications going from doctor to doctor, and it took me years to finally find doctors that were asking different questions, that were spending time with me more than 15 fucking minutes in a room and were actually asking me what I was eating. Let's do mold tests. Let's see if you have a parasite. How is your stress levels? Like real questions instead of here's a prescription. Take this. You're going to get some rashes as a side effect, but let me know how it goes in 2 weeks.
Yeah. Do you mind if I just educate the audience a little bit on what ankylosing spondylitis is so they can understand what you're dealing with?
Absolutely. So ankylosing spondylitis is an autoimmune disease that essentially causes inflammation of the spine, and it's known as bamboo spine. So if not treated correctly, the spine will start to fuse together. Basically how it manifests in me is I get a lot of lower back and upper back pain. And although my spine is not fusing together, which is awesome, and in my heart, it's so interesting we say this because even though I have HLA-B27 positive and the markers, in my heart, I believe that I don't identify with it rather. So I don't even really say the word that much, and I believe I'll beat it, even though it's something they say you have for life. But it essentially affects your spine, but autoimmune in general is affecting my entire body, and I'll have flare-ups. And when I have these flare-ups, it's systemic inflammation to where my joints and my hands it'll hurt to squeeze my hand. I'll start to have headaches, really bad lower back and upper back pain because of the ankylosing spondylitis, and a lot of other things like brain fog, fatigue. I'll feel hungover even though I don't really drink. So that's ankylosing spondylitis kind of in a nutshell, although it looks like now I probably have a lot more systemic autoimmunity on top of that.
Yes, I appreciate that. When I was in school, the way that they taught us to look for that on an x-ray for people listening was it would look like railroad tracks going up the spine when people hadn't had it treated, because now it basically just meant that the spine was thickening in places. So not an awesome thing to be training with and boxing with, but I want to speak to what you talked about where you don't identify with it. It's not something that is going to beat you. Most people have disc injuries. And when you have a disc injury, you have one for life. And not everybody who has disc injuries has pain from them. So what happens is, unfortunately, too often in our society, doctors, not for any ill will
Right.
provide somebody with a diagnosis so that they can understand and go learn about what is it that I'm dealing with. And then people become that diagnosis and they decide I am somebody who has ankylosing spondylitis. So I'm always going to have XYZ. And this is my future. And it's already dedicated. It's already there. And that doesn't have to be the case. So again, a lot of respect for you isolating that. Yeah, I have these markers, but I don't identify as someone who lives with this disease.
Hey man, I'm glad you said that, because at first when I got the diagnosis, since we'd spent like 2 years trying to figure out what the hell was wrong with me, I was relieved. It was like, honest to God, I was in so much pain and in and out of hospitals and dealing with shit and out of the ring for 18 months at least, that I think I was like, just tell me something bad so I at least know what it is, right? And it was a relief when I got the diagnosis. But then as years went on, I started to realize I can't identify with this shit, because the mind-body connection is massive, and especially with autoimmunity. And I'm starting to realize that. I mean, you read about like books like Joe Dispenza's You Are the Placebo. It was like one of my favorite books that kind of started to open up my mind to this. But you realize that if you wake up every day thinking and knowing and feeling you have this thing, you're only exacerbating the situation. And that's not saying if you get diagnosed with cancer to just ignore it and not believe your doctor. But at the same time, your mindset on it, and I've seen this firsthand, it will massively determine how much pain you're in, how much worse it gets, all those things. And that may sound woo-woo to some people, but people are starting to come along and understand that idea. That's why I say right off the bat, I don't identify with this shit. I deal with it. I go see chiropractors. I get muscle work. I work on my diet, all that shit. But I'm not constantly reading blogs about the next medication for AS people and, all this stuff. I almost try to forget about it.
Well, I think it's a progressive way to think about it. It's how you win the fight, if you will. So yeah. I have another question, not about that, but I have one boxing related question that I have to ask you, because I'm hoping to never experience this unless if it comes down to it and I have to experience it. Right. What is the feeling like to just fucking drop somebody who is trained to drop you? Like they're there because they're like, I'm going to take this guy's head off. And then you're like,
It's so funny when some of my biggest knockouts, like one punch, boom, out cold. I've had a handful of knockouts like that. It's like hitting a sweet spot on a bat. You almost like don't even feel it. And that's not every punch. But for me, when I've had those like boom shots, it's like you hit it so perfectly that you almost like kind of don't even feel it. But when you get that shot and you jump on the ropes and there's thousands of people in the arena, it's the best drug feeling you're ever going to take in your life. And I think that's, like you said, why guys stay in it too long. It's not the money at the end of the day, even though that's a huge factor. It's that feeling that you get for 10 seconds that you worked for years and years for. And that guy across from you is trying to get two, but you got it. You got that feeling before he did. And so I have a couple like that. One in particular, Madison Square Garden, where I got I think it was a 4th round knockout right before. It was the undercard of a big Miguel Cotto fight on HBO. And right hand knockout right to the nose, and he was done. And it was like one of the most beautiful adrenaline highs of my life. It was incredible, man. I still think about it. In fact, I actually broke my hand in that fight, not from that shot, but I broke my hand. So I have a big scar on my knuckles, and it's kind of like a tattoo in a sense. And every time I see that scar, I think of that fight and just what a cool moment it was for me.
Is the scar from surgery? Or did your bone come through the skin? Okay.
Yeah, I had a boxer's fracture, and it was bad enough that I had to have surgery. But my knuckle in training camp was already bothering me, so I kind of wasn't surprised. But it was wild. Came back to the dressing room, and we took my hand wraps off, and I was doing an interview, and I felt no pain up until that point. My hand felt kind of numb, but all of a sudden they took the hand wrap off, and my right hand was twice the size of my left hand. Mm-hmm. And boom, the pain kicked in, and right away they took me to the hospital. But it's kind of crazy, like what adrenaline and what your mindset will do, because up until that moment, I didn't really feel that pain. It wasn't until I actually saw it that the pain kicked in. So yeah, that was wild.
Well, so you mentioned you had a boxer's fracture. Have you ever heard of a barroom fracture?
No. What's that?
So it's basically an amateur's fracture. So a boxer's fracture is going to be of one of the second two knuckles, right? Like the index finger or the ring or the middle finger. The barroom fracture or the amateur's fracture is of the ring finger or the pinky.
Oh.
And because if you're in a bar fight and you don't know what you're doing to throw a punch,
yeah,
you hit somebody with the wrong knuckle and it breaks pretty easy.
I like that. I've never heard that before.
It's called a barroom fracture. I like to call it an amateur fracture.
Well, it's wild. I mean, you know more about the human body than I do, but I have areas of my knuckles, these front two knuckles that you're supposed to hit with that I learned since 8 years old, that protrude and they're bigger than my other knuckles. So like you look at my hand and it looks different than normal person hand because the years of hitting these knuckles, they're like hard as a rock and they're just like bigger and wider. So the body adapts.
Well, and it's funny that you bring that up because boxing is one of those sports. I know there's a lot of politics in it, but it's also one of those sports where you have to win, like for a long time. You don't just get to be really good and then get your shot. And the interesting thing about that is the way that time actually allows your body to physically change in order to better fit the job description. Like you couldn't fight a championship fight with the knuckles that you brought to your first fight. It might not work.
Yeah, so, or the mind you had in your first fight.
That's for sure. That's a given.
Yeah.
So another hard turn here. You work with your sister, and your sister is successful in her own right, and I can tell how proud of her you are for that, and how much love you have for her success. You smile even when I say it. Like it's very cool. I have a younger sister also. She's 3 years younger than me. I would love to see her have similar success to your sister, whatever success she wants. You know. What is the hardest part of doing business with a younger sibling?
Very good question. It is hard at times. So the hardest part is me and Angie are different people. And you need this when you're starting a business and you have a co-founder, so to speak. I'm very analytical. I'm in the numbers. I'm more of that, what is that, right side of the brain, I guess. And she is very like creative in the clouds. Let's launch this product. Let's do this event. And I'm like, well, how are we going to do that? And how much money does it cost? And so for us, it's kind of constant struggle because I'm just trying to run the ship here as a CEO and focus on something. And then all of a sudden I get a call from her saying, I want to do this product. You know what we should do? We need to do chocolate CBD. Let's do this. And I'm like, Ange, I'm working like 20 hours a day here because I'm trying to figure out this formulation that you said you wanted to do a week ago and we all agreed to. So that's the toughest part. And we deal with it a lot is like, she calls it squirrel brain. Her brain's all over the place and there's beauty in it, but damn it, it's frustrating for someone like me. And we will argue and battle. And yeah, I feel like she usually wins.
Everybody on our staff at Active Life just said, that's what it's like for us working with Sean. That's what he does to us.
Yeah.
I'm more like your sister, I guess. I'm all like, yo, we should do this. This is a really good idea. We should do this. And here's how I want to speak to something that you did there that we try to do as often as possible as a team. And that is, you asked the question that I don't know if you realize what a big deal it is to say, how would we do that? Instead of, we can't do that because. It's how would we do that? That's a big deal. And you might not realize that that's a big deal because it may come natural to you that you're just like, all right, well, let's explore it. How would we do it? And if we figure out that we can, and it makes sense, then let's do it. Yeah. There's a lot of training for people who don't do that. Goes into making sure that they're able to say, how would we do that? Instead of, we can't do that because this, and this. It's like, well, what if this, and this didn't exist? Then could we do it? Yeah. Okay. Well, how would we get rid of this, and this? That seems like the solution. So very cool. You get right to it.
Well, that's really interesting. You say that. I didn't realize I did that, but I guess I do realize now that I don't like saying no to things. I really don't. And because I'm not a very risk averse person. I mean, obviously I've risked my life every time I jump in that damn ring. So I'm a little farther on the spectrum than Angie for sure, but I still love the ideas and I'm like, okay, that's awesome, but how the hell do we do it? And yeah, I guess you're right. I don't come into it just saying no, because as I just said, like some of the greatest moments of my life have been risky moves, have been moments that scared the shit out of me. And so I've just never been accustomed to saying no. I'm always like, all right, well, good idea, but how do we do it?
Well, let's play some Jeopardy. Moments that scare the shit out of you for 500. What's the one that comes to your mind?
Walking into Madison Square Garden and about 19,000 people there right before a big world title fight. And I'm walking out naked, basically I say naked because I got gloves on and trunks on and nothing else. And I'm about to fight another human being. And one of us might die tonight. I mean, 3 fighters died in 2019.
Local guy from here. One of them was a local guy.
Was he really?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that has scared the shit out of me. Any fighter that says they're not nervous, scared, whatever word they want to put in, they're lying. It's complete bullshit. Even Mike Tyson used to want to run out of the arena before a fight, and he was the baddest man on the planet. So those moments have scared the shit out of me. But damn it, it's the best feeling in the world, even win or lose, when you get through it.
So I think that that's a valuable lesson for anybody listening to this who's scared to do whatever they need to do. I imagine the scarier it was for you to go in, the higher the high was coming out.
That's why I kept going back.
Yeah. Did every fight get scarier and scarier because the competition got bigger and bigger? Or is that not a thing?
No, not necessarily. I think the last one, I didn't tell anybody, but I knew in my heart I was done. So win or lose, I was going to be done. So that had a different feeling to it of scary, of like, almost like I was relieved it was over, just because I was in so much pain in that training camp, physical pain, trying to get through it. But no, not necessarily scary and scarier, but that's an interesting point that you just made. It always did feel better getting out. And that was like that addictive. I was like addicted to that feeling that kept bringing me forward and forward, but I just didn't want regret. I was lucky. My dad at a very young age taught me, that tomorrow is promised to no one. He used to say that to me all the time. And it wasn't until older I realized it. And I never wanted that feeling. I was like, you know what? I'm going to fucking fail. And even my last fight, dude, I got knocked out in front of 1 million people on TV. I lost to the best in the world. And I'm never afraid to embarrass myself, and I'm not afraid to lose. And I think that that's made me successful in a lot of other areas, as much as it sucks to lose and as much as it sucks to get knocked down. It's kind of the beauty of it.
So what's scarier, a boxing match or placing a purchase order on product that you haven't sold yet?
Dude, weirdly, well, it's different types of scary, but running a company and having people's livelihoods depend on you and putting this all in is almost scarier in a sense. It's a different type of feeling, but yeah.
It's funny. I mentioned once before on the podcast, I think I was talking to Joe DeSena from Spartan Race when I mentioned this. When you're in a business that you own and people are working towards your vision together, in the beginning, it's you. And you're like, oh man, I hope I can pay the bills. Oh man, I hope I can make enough money to do the things I want to do in my life. And that's scary enough. And then you make hires. And now you see the kind of lives that the people on the team are able to live in large part because of the money that they gain from working in the company. And the nights are no longer spent awake because you're worried about yourself. It's now, I want to make sure that all of those people are still able to live the kind of life that they are proud to live because they support our mission. And I think that's actually scarier.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, they become family, right? Mm-hmm. So, and the one thing why it's a different scary really quick with boxing, I had control in a sense. So like I knew when I jumped in that ring, I trained my ass off. I know what I'm staring at. I might lose, I might get knocked out, but like, it's my fight. I get to dictate how hard I'm going to go, if I'm going to get back up off the mat, all these different things. And now in business, there's so many other things I just can't control. There's so many other variables. And so that kind of scares the shit out of me, not being able to control all the variables when I was in a position where it was all up to me. I didn't have 10 other teammates to lean on. And there's like a weird sense of like security / you're also scared shitless. Oh, it's all on me, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I was explaining to somebody today on our team that owning a business is kind of like being married to everybody who's employed. And you need to keep all of your spouses happy.
Yeah.
And at the same time, productive. So it's like, you know, in your marriage, if you haven't had sex in a while, it can become like, what do I got to do to make this happen again?
Yeah.
And at the same time, you're like, hey, I want to make sure I'm providing for you as a husband the way that I'm supposed to. And you're like, with that grit, and like, and I would really like to get laid too. That would be fucking great. So it's interesting in business. I find it very similar because everybody every day decides, they wake up and they're like, do I want to work for this company anymore? Yes. Great. There can be a day when they wake up and they say, I don't know. And then it starts to go the other way. And everyone you lose, it's never fun. So go ahead. You were going to say something.
No, go ahead.
I wanted to go back to your dad. I listened to one of my good friends who you interviewed with, Michael Cashew, and you talked about the instance when you got beat as like an 8-year-old or something, and you went in the bathroom and you were crying. Your dad came in and pulled you out of the bathroom and basically was like, look, this happens. This is boxing. And I'm curious about, as a father myself, how did you perceive the line that he was riding, if you will, of tough love versus there for you at the same time? Because I'm always concerned about, concerned is the wrong word. I'm always thinking about, am I making the right decision about what I help my kids with and what I don't, and what I allow my kids an easy way out from and what I don't. And I'm curious how that experience shaped you.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think, you know, one day when I become a father, it'll be very interesting as I navigate that too, right? Because in my dad's defense, he wanted to give me the world and teach me things the hard way. But at the same time, you know, I grew up, you know, being taught by him. He was a guy who was from inner city, didn't even graduate high school, ended up, you know, becoming successful on his own. And I always looked up to him and idolized him for that, because he was such a tough son of a bitch, came from nothing and made something. And he instilled like work ethic and being tough and all these things in me at such a young age. I mean, 8 years old, throwing me in a ring. I mean, he was just very, very tough on me. And so I think throughout my adolescence, I was always seeking his approval. And I think even as a young man in my 20s, I was fighting and I was like seeking his approval unknowingly. And there's two sides of the coin there, because on one side, it made me very successful in my sport. It pushed me so hard. But on the other side, especially I think towards the end of my career, when I thought I should be done because I was in so much pain, I wanted him, in a sense, to tell me to stop. I wanted my dad to sit down next to me when, you know, after a fight, I'm in the hospital till 4 a.m. in pain. I wanted him to say, you know, Mike, do you really want this? Is this enough? But that's not in him. What's in him is, get through this. You're going to be fine. I got you. Like, let's work on the next fight. So there is that internal battle where I kind of resented him for that in a sense, but also a beauty in that it made me a tough son of a bitch. It made me someone who broke their rib in the second round and fought 8 more rounds and won the fight. I wouldn't be that person without him, but there is the other side of the coin there. So I don't have a clear-cut answer, but I know that I was pushed really hard, maybe a little bit too hard, but I also don't know if I would have gotten as far as I would without it. So that's a tough one.
I'm just going to ask you for your number after this podcast. I'll keep you on speed dial. And when I'm not sure what to do, I'm like, Mike, should I push this one or should I let this one go? And you'll make the call. You'll parent my kids from a distance.
Yeah. I mean, I think no matter what, teach your girls how to fight. I think that empowers them without a doubt. Put them in some boxing lessons or jiu-jitsu or something. That way, if a boy messes with them, you know, you don't have to knock on the door and get yourself in trouble.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's always good if they can handle themselves. I know I was a way too overprotective big brother with my sister, Angie. I mean, any guy that came around the house in high school, you know, knew right away who I was, that I fought, you know, that he better not fuck around. But she hated me for it then, but I think she's grateful now.
Yeah. The limited fight training that I have is always with, I have a guy who I train with one-on-one, and my schedule, my interests just don't align with me changing the time to make myself available to train with other people.
Yeah.
So every time I train, I get my ass kicked. Like, I think I've landed like 8 punches in 2 years. And every time I did, I was like a little bit surprised. And then I got popped with the counter because I stayed there for a second. Like, wow, that landed. Boom. So I would come home, and my oldest daughter is 6. She'd be like, Dad, come to the back room. I'm like, what are we doing? That's where the playroom is. And she'd be like, put your hands up. I put my hands up, and she's like, we got to practice so you can beat Billy. I'm like, okay.
That's awesome.
Because I would come home and the nanny would be like, get your ass kicked again today. I'm like, yep.
Yeah,
Sure did. Yeah. So I want to hear about Soul CBD. I want to know a little bit about the company, because I know very little about the CBD space. I know that I tried it and I was like, this doesn't get me high. How do I know if it's working? And it's not a party drug.
Right.
So that's out. And how do I know if it's I'm not in a lot of pain. So how do I know if this stuff is working? I take it before I go to bed. And then when I started looking into it a little bit, I saw that there are CBD companies all over the place, many of whom sell a product that was CBD like 6 months ago and now is like rancid flaxseed oil that you're downing.
Amen. That is the difficult thing about this industry now, is it's not completely regulated. And we can go into that, a lot. My feelings on that. I think ultimately it's not an if, but a when, and you're seeing this in the cannabis industry in general. So that's a beautiful thing that, I want to be a part of as you make this a little less taboo. But CBD, as you mentioned, it's not psychoactive. What it's doing is it's affecting the endocannabinoid system, which is something that we've known is a system in our body that affects our central nervous system, which affects so many other areas of our body. Inflammation, helps with sleep, helps with anxiety. It basically puts your nervous system into homeostasis. So it works a lot of different ways for different people, but the main 3 pain points that we see are sleep, anxiety, and pain. So pain for the inflammation. A lot of people like to take it at night to help sleep, and then anxiety. And the big thing is what I noticed, and one thing you said, which kind of made me think this, more often than not, we hear from people, I notice when I stop taking it. So I notice when I take it every single day, I have a little less anxiety. I can deal with the kids a little bit more. I'm moving a little bit better. I'm sleeping better. And then when I stop taking it, maybe because I forgot, then I kind of notice when I'm off of it. So unlike THC, where you're going to know right away you're high, it's less likely to all of a sudden, boom, you feel something psychoactively. Although within 30 to 45 minutes, a lot of people do experience lower anxiety and feeling calmer with CBD and the other cannabinoids in general. But it is one of those things that when it affects the endocannabinoid system, it takes time. It's good to be consistent, similar to any other supplement like turmeric you're taking every day to help fight inflammation. But we've really seen some incredible movement in this space, and now a lot of clinical data and study showing how beneficial CBD is, how beneficial the hemp plant is, that there's no toxicity, which is really important. You cannot overdose on it, which is incredible. You can't even say that about Advil or Tylenol, let alone the prescription painkillers that kill thousands of people every single year that we're just writing off with no issue. So it's low risk, high reward. And I'm just grateful that we've been able to help so many people. I mean, dude, I get testimonials or DMs almost every single day that come in. This changed my life. I can finally sleep. This helped my kids. People that are new to it, learning, will this get me high? No, it won't get you high. But like you also said, it's important. There's only a few companies out there. I'm not going to say we're the only one, but there are a few companies out there. It's a small group that really take time to show you the COAs, the certificates of analysis, the third-party lab testing, to show you that there's no heavy metals in there. There's no pesticides. There's no THC. There's enough CBD that we're actually claiming there is in the bottle. That's really important, that transparency is there. It's not there in the industry, but it is there with Soul CBD, because I was getting drug tested before every single big title fight. It had huge implications if I pop positive for it. So obviously as an athlete, I cared what I put in my body. So that's why me and Angie love going on shows and platforms like this, because it allows me to tell people like, this is something that I take. It affected my career in a positive way. And I want to spread this. I give it to my family and my friends, and, you know, you can trust us, you can trust our product, and, you know, all the evidence is right there on the website.
I would love to go deeper into it. I know we're up against the clock and I don't want to keep you. Anything that I didn't ask you that you feel like would have been valuable for our audience to learn about you or about your company or about what you believe, anything?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things that have really, really helped me that I want people to start looking into. And this is outside of CBD, but as I think about anxiety and my mindset, really like meditation and visualization is something that I absolutely love. I did throughout my career, and that's a whole area, a whole other podcast we could like dive into, but
we can do it again.
That and breath work. And so I just say that maybe as a cue, maybe someone's listening, been circling around it, but doing breath work and meditation and visualization has helped me not only as an athlete, but really with my autoimmune disease and my stress. And so there's so many different ways to go about it, and the internet's chock full of it. There's apps, there's everything, but I don't know. It just came to the top of my mind because I'm diving more and more into it, and it really, really helped me. And I think guys especially should be open to it. They should be open to meditation and breath work and all these different modalities.
Yeah, Mike, we do a seminar once a month for fitness professionals, and we started off with a guided meditation that's laced with breath work.
Oh,
so
dude,
we're looking to change neurological state and have their mindset be different when they walk into, like, they come in, they're like, all right, this is what the seminar is going to be, another seminar. And then we're like, close your eyes, lay down. What the fuck is this? And it changes everything about the tone. So I'm in lockstep with you there. Where can people find you?
So Instagram, it's @official Mike Lee. And then the company Soul CBD is mysoulcbd.com. And same with the Instagram handle @mysoulcbd. My sister, I think, is @Angie Lee Show. So it's Mike Lee and Angie Lee. But DM me, reach out. If you have any questions about how much CBD you should take. You know, sometimes THC works for people. So we're not a company that has THC. I don't demonize it. I can steer you in the right direction of another reputable company that does work with THC. But yeah, I just love helping people get out of pain. And so, reach out, connect.
I love it, man. There are synergies for you guys and us. Maybe we should be talking about that kind of stuff. We love getting
Let's
people
do it.
too.
I got to send you a care package regardless.
I would love it. I would love a care package. I'll let you, cool. I'll test that can overdose on it. I'm just kidding. I'm not an excess kind of guy. Mike Lee, I'll let you go. I appreciate so much your time today.
Awesome. Thanks, Sean. I appreciate you having me.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Active Life podcast. If you did, please be sure to head to wherever you listened to it and give us a quality review, as well as 5 stars if you can spare them. If you want more from us, feel free to follow all of our social media accounts at Active Life Professional, Active Life RX, and Dr. Sean Pastuch on Instagram. Remember, at Active Life, we believe that the healthcare clinic of the future is the gym, and the healthcare provider of the future is the coach. We also believe that future is now.